So basically, selectors is used to define HTML elements you want to style. So what are the types of selectors we have? Because now we are only selecting them by their tag, by the tag, but there are other ways in which you can select elements in HTML. For example, this P tag. Let's remove this P. Let's select it through other means. So now, another way in which you can select it is by giving them an ID. Let's say I have an attribute ID. I give it let's say paragraph. So this is an ID selector. So I come here. Let me just copy that the ID. Come here. Oh, sorry. I come to the style sheet. I remove the element selector, the element or type selector, which is P. I add an ID selector. So when you want to add an ID selector, the first thing you have to put is a pound sign. Put a pound sign, this, then the name that is attached to the ID attribute, the value of the ID attribute in the HTML file, which is paragraph. Do you understand? So are we sure these are selected the file? Yes, it has selected the file. How do we know that? Okay, let me decide to change the color so we can know if it has really selected the file. Let me change to something like green. Let me change to green. Can you see? You can see that the color has changed also. Okay, let's increase the font size. 10 pixels. Can you see that the font size? So this is another way in which you can select elements in HTML. So let's look at the third way. So the third way in which we can select elements is through a class selector. So we'll go back to our HTML document. Let me change that of the welcome to extent up. So I come here and say you give it a class name, a class attribute, then you give it a value. So we want to make this header. So this is a class attribute. So let's save it. So come to our HTML document. Let's remove the element or type selector, which is the H1. So now to write a class selector, what do? You start with the dot header. So let's save that file. You can see that our header is still yellow. Let me change the color to blue. Let's save the file. So there are basically three ways in which you can select elements in HTML. So through the ID, through the class, and through the element or type selectors. So let's go a bit deeper. So, but you might ask, okay, can I group selectors? Yes, you can group selectors in HTML, CSS. So, what do I mean by grouping selectors together? Let's take an example here. So let's go back to our HTML file. Let's add more content. By the way, there's a shortcut in which you can write your faster way to write HTML. It's called emmet. So basically, you just write your style, you write the elements and the class name dot. So it adds the class name. So that's what I just did now. Let me repeat it. So P dot. So the dot signifies a class, just like in CSS. And the name of that class. So let's say text. Can you see? Then tab. So it completes the tag for you. So here right, I love CSS. Can you see? I love CSS. Let's add an H2. So I'll move these tags into the H2 elements. So we have the H2 element now. So if I save this file now, you notice that, let me return the paragraph ID. Okay, so let's remove this. Let's remove all this. So let me save this file. Let me save this. I save this also. And see, they all lose the style. Yeah. So what can we do? So basically, we want to group selectors now. So let me roll their class name. So if I come here and I do, let's say H2 color green. I save that file. Can you see? What happened? Our H2 is not selected anymore. Okay. So let's do one more thing again. Our paragraph is an ID. So let's select our paragraph. We'll come back to what I just said now. Paragraph. Let's give it a color red. Yeah, you can see the style was applied to the paragraph. So let's look at our class text. Okay, this is an H1. Let's add H1. So you can see style is applied. Let's add what's the class name? Text. Let's give it a color of yellow. So they have been selected. But what if we decide to add another div here? Let's add another div. Let me add a class name. Maybe a class paragraph. So for this div, I'm going to call it container. So we are no more using ID here, so we'll change that to so change this pound sign to dots since we are using. So just like I said, if I decide to use container, I decide to remove the class name here. I'm like, how do I style this? How can I style this P tag here? So there's a way to group selectors together in CSS. So I can decide to do, look at the parent of that P tag, of this P tag. What's the parent of this P tag? The parent of the P tag is container, which is this div. So I can decide to do this, come here and do, since we remove the class name, I decide to do container and add the P here. Can you see? So what this means is that immediately I added container, every P element in the container inherited this color, red. Why? Because they are descendant of the container. And P tag has a higher specificity. So we'll look more into specificity as we go on.